Welcome to the Global Wellness HQ family of podcasts. We are your international headquarters for resources and ideas and insight in relation to the 9 elements of holistic wellness. Join us as we interview local and international wellness experts and learn how you can implement and improve one element or dimension of wellness at a time. Our experts will share their practical tips on wellness in one of these core areas: emotional, intellectual, occupational, physical, environmental, financial, spiritual, social, or habitual. We created our family of podcasts as a resource for anyone who is looking to integrate the 9 elements of holistic wellness into their daily lives. Welcome to the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm excited. I have my new friend, Sheryl Green, with me. Sheryl, why don't you say hi and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Hi, Jeff. Thank you for having me on the show. This is awesome. I was dubbed a boundary sage, so I'm running with that because that's the best title ever. I'm a mental health speaker and author. I just put out my 6th book called You Had Me at No: How Setting Healthy Boundaries Helps Banish Burnout, Repair Relationships, and Save Your Sanity. And I work with people to empower them to set healthy boundaries so that they can live a better life.
I love that. And I think let's talk about boundaries, and we'll talk about a lot of things, but I think a lot of people, and I'm a recovering people pleaser. Trust me, I've got scars from, saying yes to people and then regretting it. Let's talk about saying no, and we'll get to other things as well, but I think there's this misconception, and I'm one of these people, so I'm asking for me. A few years ago, I'd say yes to everything, and then I'd feel guilty because I wasn't getting it done. And then at some point, I'd piss the person off that I was trying to help because they'd be like, "Hey, you haven't got it done yet." And then I'd resent it because I'd look at it and go, "Well, you waited a week for me to come and shovel your walk. Why didn't you just do it yourself?" So let's talk about no versus yes, because I feel like yes pisses more people off than no. Am I crazy or fair?
No, that's actually a really great way to put it. So my thing with no is, one, it allows you to say yes later. It's not this negative, I'm not helping the world, screw you kind of attitude. It's the ability to take on the projects, the opportunities, whatever it is that you can actually handle by saying no to the ones that you can't. And what you're talking about, that automatic yes, I call that yes vomit. Because for recovering people pleasers, we had the yes out, or have the yes out, before the person has stopped the question, has finished the question. We're already, yes, I'll help you, yes, whatever you need. um and the whole point behind healthy boundaries is to stop that yes vomit. It's to create an opportunity for intentional decision making. And that was actually the first working, extremely boring title for this book, was intentional decision making. And yeah, I think I chose the better option.
Yep.
But really, it's being able to evaluate something when it comes your way and say, do I have the resources to do this? Because what you're talking about when you said yes and now you're pissing people off a week later, it's because you didn't have the resources. You didn't have the time to do it. You didn't have the energy. Maybe you didn't have the desire. But you agreed to something just because that's what you always did. And yeah, it pisses people off. I mean, you're letting someone down, because if you say you're going to do something, whether you should have said yes or not, they're expecting it, and now they're counting on you.
Yep. I love that. Now we're gonna have some fun here because I think yes vomit. I mean that kind of, it feels icky, but it should, right? Uh,
Mhm.
so
Yes.
and It's funny. It was almost a badge of honor. I've literally, and I mean this in the true sense of the word, literally burnt out 3 times. One time I didn't think I was ever getting off the couch. Like I was just so done, and it was self-inflicted. I'm not blaming anyone, but it was I lived by that mantra, you want something done, give it to a busy person. And unfortunately, I was the busy person always getting things done.
Yes.
So I'd be like, oh, just leave it on my desk. I'll finish it. And, you know, I can tell you after so many months of 100-hour work weeks, the body just says, I'm done. So for those people, we'd like to get to them and help them before that. But the reality is, we as human beings, we're strange creatures. We're oddly wired, and we don't ask for help until we're at that point. What is that cat poster from the '80s when you're at the end of your rope, tie a knot and hang on? So how can we start? Because I think, I mean, the reason most people, I suspect, and I want to hear your opinion or your expert ideas, why do people struggle with boundaries in the first place? Let's start with that piece.
So I'm not trying to blame parents when I say this. However, it's because we weren't taught. If you grew up in a home where your parents didn't have healthy boundaries, where they didn't even know what boundaries were, and you never talked about boundaries as a child, and they weren't modeled for you, how are you supposed to know?
Yeah.
We have this concept that we go into adulthood, and like, you turn 18 and at 12:01 in the morning, all of this information gets downloaded to you. That didn't happen for me. Maybe it happens for someone, but if you're coming out of childhood without those tools and really without the knowledge of the basic concept of boundaries, then it's something you're going to either learn the hard way, it's something you're not going to learn at all, or it's something that you're going to trip over my book or somebody else's book or a therapist or a coach that mentions it. And you're like, that's an interesting concept. I've never even heard of that. So really, if you don't have them at this point, it's not your fault. And this was a quote from Will Smith years ago. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
I love that. I love that. And I think that's, you know, a lot of people want to blame their parents. They look at their childhood and go, "Oh, I didn't get a pony." And you know, I'm not one of those talk it out in therapy kind of people. I'm like, shit happened. Let's move on. Um, but the reality is, when we just say shit happens and move on, when you're older, at some point, the universe will keep pushing your boundaries until you have to raise your hand, put up the white flag, and say, enough. I'm
I-
going to take responsibility.
okay, I'll deal with this and I'll buy my own pony.
Fine. So, how did you've done a lot, and by the way, I'm impressed by anyone who's written a book, let alone 6.
Thank you.
Um, it's personally, I'm just gonna say this, Cheryl, writing is my therapy.
Mhm.
And the more I write, you can tell the more I'm therapizing. Is that a word? I just
There.
made it up.
I think it's therapizing. Whatever. You're good.
Self there.
Roll with it.
That sounds better. It rolls off my tongue a little easier than whatever I was trying to say. Um, but it's fascinating how we either deal with something or we deal around something. So you mentioned that you had taken people pleasing to Olympic levels. What was the moment you mentioned a metaphorical brick wall, and I don't suspect it was that metaphorical because I'm sure it was. What was the turning point where you realized you need to start doing something different?
So there were two turning points. There was the, oh my goodness, I'm not going to make it like this. And then there was the, I now realize what my problem is and I'm going to work towards fixing it. So this was about, it's probably going on 3 years now. It was late October, early November, and I was working full time for an animal rescue that I had actually been volunteering with for 8 years at that point, 6 years, something like that. And I was also running my own business. So I had a content writing business, books, things like that. And it was like every day I was falling further and further behind. I couldn't get my client work done. I couldn't get everything I wanted done for the rescue. And I kept taking on more responsibility. You know, in a small organization, you wear so many hats. And at no point was I able to say, I have enough on my plate right now and I can't take any more. And then you add to that, you know, my parents, my dad and my stepmom were getting older and needing more help from me. And I was still taking on volunteer roles from other organizations.
Do it.
I seriously, and you know, it just, I lived to serve. I lived to be there for everyone else and put everybody else before me. And one day I had started, so I cry a lot. And every time my husband or my friends hear this, they're like, yeah, no, like it's ridiculous. I cry a lot. I'm a very sensitive person. However, there are periods when I am not crying. A
Like
great
right now.
time life. Yeah, I'm okay. At this point in my life, I couldn't get a sentence out without crying. I couldn't stop. It was the first time in my life that I'd ever had drinks. And I just say have drinks because I was not like taking down a bottle, but it was the only time I'd had drinks because of stress. Like I was trying to fix something.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing for me was resentment. There was this feeling of why does everyone need me?
Yep.
Like I was resentful of my friends, of my job, of the rescue, of my parents. And that felt wrong. And you know, one day I was just driving down the road and I saw those oncoming headlights, and I had this quick thought jump into the head of, you know, what if I just crossed over the median? It would all be over in a second, and I wouldn't have to deal with this. And scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I've been there, done that, and it's that holy shit, I'm not okay.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah.
For
Yeah.
me, my mantra, my pissed off moment was, I'm not that important. Why can't you do things without me? It's like
Yes.
people are waiting for me to wake up and ask me things, and it's like, unless I married you or I'm your father, I owe
Uh,
you nothing. Stay out of
yes.
my house, out of my
Yes.
head.
Well, but I mean that's the thing, and that's where we go wrong. And I jotted something down when you were talking before because I want to mention this aspect of responsibility. And you know, we sometimes we go into, whether it's boundary work or other things, we go in as victims. You know, they did this to me. Why can't they deal with it? You know, why can't they make the world work without me? And we've trained them. We've trained the people in our lives, our clients, our bosses, our family, our friends, to rely on us to this degree.
Yep.
So
And it's
I,
really, if I may, Cheryl, it's one of those oh shit moments when you look in the mirror and go, damn it, you did this to me. Like it's
yep, yep, like, oops, that's my fault. That's my bad.
I will take responsibility. Thank you, Will Smith. I don't need to
Yes.
be, beaten over the head by it. I get it. It was my fault. But I think if you had that moment where you're driving, I've had that moment as well. And I know others have had that moment. Now, for people who are in that place, they haven't quite had their, oncoming traffic moment. Where can they go to get help? Because, one of the things I think there's not a lot of conversations about boundaries. You know, we're so busy canceling people, nobody's stopping to, you know, like we're such an angry time, and I blame social media because I think it amplifies the angry. I generally believe humanity is amazing and most people are good. How can somebody get help with boundaries? And I love that you say I didn't even know it was a thing because I didn't either.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, look, I started out someone, and I don't even remember who, someone recommended a book to me, and it was my first introduction into the world of boundaries. And it took me a while. You know, I read it the first time and I was like, this sounds nice. I should get some of these. But it wasn't until a couple of months later that I started doing it again. And a friend of mine wanted me to be the incoming president for an organization. And I was like, I knew I wanted to say no, but I didn't want to disappoint her. And I kept going. I kept, you know, like, okay, let me think about it. Let me think about it. And it wasn't until I finally said yes to her and instantly regretted it that I was like, oh, my problem is boundaries. And I went back, I reread that book and realized that this was something I needed to learn and it was something I needed to teach. And for people that are dealing with this, I would say realizing that you have a problem, like in anything, isn't that what they say about like alcoholics? Realizing that you have a problem, it truly is the first step.
Yeah.
And it's okay to talk about it. And when you do, when you you start this boundary journey, there's this realization of not everybody in your life actually has terrible boundaries. And when you start thinking about it and you go back and you're like, well, wait a second, somebody said no to me. I asked for help with something and, you know, John, whatever it is, said no. And I didn't like it at the time and it felt really disgusting. And I was
What
like,
a
John's a piece of
bastard.
crap, seriously. Um, but you start to recognize that there actually are people out there with healthy boundaries. And, you know, if you're just starting out, mention it to them.
Yep.
You know, if there's somebody that's at all close to you, go and say, hey, you know, I recognize that you said no to me one day. Like,
What the
tell
hell,
me
man?
more. Tell me more. Look, boundary work is, it's a lot. It's a lot of inner work. Throughout my book, my warning is, look, if you've got some deep-seated trauma that's coming up, this book is not prepared. It is not equipped to help you. So get a therapist. You know, work with somebody that has the, and I know you said you don't like spilling your problems to somebody, but work with somebody who has the ability to look at you in the eye and notice if there's a major warning sign.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, look, obviously I'm going to say start with my book. It's a great jumping off point.
What if I said no to that? I'm
Then
kidding.
you would be setting a healthy boundary, and that's okay. Weird for a podcast, but whatever.
It's kind of the end of the conversation. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump into the book. And for the record, I don't discourage others from getting therapy. What I've figured out is I don't need to talk it through. I just need to figure out what's wrong in the code, and I throw out the buggy code and I move forward. But I'm a little bit more mentally disciplined than most people, and I've done decades of inner work. So, you know, to me, having a therapist, I'm going to be honest, driving somewhere and then waiting in a waiting room and then, you know, all of that, it's like, God, I could have done this myself at home. So,
Yeah. But sometimes they have a dog.
yes,
So
there you
that's a
go.
bonus. So,
I have allergies. So, you know,
oh
I'm a
no.
pain in the butt. I love dogs, they love me, but then
Yeah,
I just make a choice of, okay, I'm gonna be sneezing for a week, but that's okay because it's always worth it. But
always. Always.
I'm more of a horse guy, by the way. So if a therapist has a
Okay.
horse, I'm there.
I've seen it, equine therapy. I've
Yep.
seen it.
I
So,
I have a friend who does equine therapy with veterans for PTSD,
yep.
and it's beautiful because they rescue the horses from situations, and it's this amazing synergy where human helps animal and animal helps human. It is beautiful to see because when you're hurting and some magnificent creature like that is hurting, you somehow find the energy to help them, and it's beautiful. So sorry, I made a joke. I stepped on the book, but
You're
no,
good.
the
You're good.
reality. So okay, so first things, I'm gonna pull a couple of things out of it because when we talk about inner work, I see a lot of people running like hell. This is not, you're not making them do 1,000 reps with 1,000 pounds. It's helping them figure out what their boundaries are. Um, what is it going to trigger as they're reading the book? When do they raise the white flag and say, "Oh my God, I need to talk to Sheryl"? Because for the record, we're
Yeah.
not sending them to someone else. We're going to send
Yeah.
them to Sheryl because you wrote the book on it.
One of the biggest things that I see and that I dealt with was belief systems. And you talk about coming from childhood with these ideas of I'm no.
Oh, you froze at these ideas. Sorry, I'm
Oh, sorry.
interrupting.
It was the most brilliant thing I've ever said.
It was profound. I heard angels, and now I'm like, oh, I missed it. So I have FOMO.
All good, all good. So, what was I saying? Oh, is that you come out of childhood with these belief systems and these ideas that you're not worthy, that you're not allowed to set boundaries, that your place on this planet is to put everyone else ahead.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Okay.
You
So
stopped at we don't have the idea that we can put anyone else ahead of us.
yeah, we do. We think we need to put everybody ahead of us.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
And yeah, no, it just I think dealing with those beliefs and it's the recognizing like, oh, there's this tape playing, tape, I just gave you my age there, playing underneath the surface.
I first heard it as records, so there you
There you go. Child of the 80s, sorry. Um,
go. Tony
so
Robbins used to talk about scratching the record, so
yeah,
that's what stuck in my head. Yes.
yes. Yeah, and I always think of this like music box, this creepy old music box playing in the attic because it's all packed away. But
Yeah.
every once in a while you hear it and you're like, what the hell is that? So when you realize that your underlying beliefs don't support having healthy boundaries, don't throw up the white flag. But yeah, I can help.
I love it. I love it. And you and I are gonna have some fun. Now, what can someone expect? So now I'm going to transition to actually working with you because I think, yes, buy the book, read the book, give it to your friends. I love the advice of talk to people who set boundaries because um, I've explored it like a student new to something. It's like, oh, and I'm gonna be honest, I went from no boundaries to, I pulled out the military police and put up the barricades and I said, everybody go away. Uh,
Yes.
I needed that,
Yeah.
but now I'm somewhere in the middle. So let's talk about what working with you looks like and specifically, um, can we work on Zoom? Do I have to come and visit you? Do I get to come visit you?
quite, I mean, I have a very beautiful office now. So, look, I do workshops. I There we go. I'm like, you froze. That means I did.
It's that cold in Vegas. The internet's freezing, right?
Apparently. So I do workshops and I go into organizations to do them, and I also work with individuals, in a workshop setting. And I'm putting together basically a mastermind, a, a boundary mastermind of people who want to be empowered, who want to make this difference. It's going to be on Zoom, and choose and to strengthen your boundary muscles.
I love it. I'm getting from the universe, I'm hearing it's a mind mastery mastermind, but that sucks to say on stage, so use it with care.
Mind mastery mastermind. I am writing that down. That's awesome.
My poor brain's gonna do a U-turn and I'm gonna just trip on it, but I play with words. That's what I do. So workshops now, who what kind of organization is bringing you in? Like, as an organization, what are they thinking needs to happen that they say, "Oh my God, Cheryl, we need your workshop"?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. Look, we can pretend that we walk through the door of our office and leave our personal problems behind. We can pretend that.
Yep.
Um, we can. I had a boss who used to say, problems at the door, and there's no ego here. Okay, that's great, but we're human. So, you're going to bring your issues with you. What is it? Wherever you go, there you are, kind of thing. So, and the same thing, even if they're not family specific issues, your boundary issues are going to come to work.
Yeah.
And you're going to be, as just an employee, you're going to be so I'm guessing my internet problems are not fixed. So my apologies. I thought they got fixed yesterday, but apparently not.
No worries. And for what
Um,
it's worth, you're worth waiting for.
Thank you. Thank you.
But it's
I'll just,
like, finish the sentence.
I know.
I'm just so excited. Now you're
Um,
just doing it to mess with me,
I
right?
really am. I really am. So no, what I was saying, and I don't know what you caught, but when we have boundary issues, we tend to do everybody else's work before our own.
Yep.
So we're not getting our responsibilities because we're saying that we can get things done and then we're not following through.
Yep.
So from an employer standpoint, it really behooves them to have employees, to have team members that can set healthy boundaries, that can turn around and say, you know what, my plate's really full right now, and I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to get that done when you need it done to the quality, that you expect. So, if you're, as an employer, if you're seeing signs of burnout, if you're seeing employees that are taking a lot of sick days because maybe they're mental health days, and like you said, they just can't anymore.
Yeah.
I use that all the time. I just can't today.
My phrase was not today.
Not today.
So you and I have traveled a similar
But it's true. You just get to this point, you just can't handle it. You you,
yeah.
you just can't. And look, if you're seeing a lot of
Yeah.
turnover in your organization, there could be many reasons for that. But one of them could be the fact that your employees just have too much to do and they can't handle it and they're looking for greener pastures.
I love it. Now, I'm going to ask you a flip question of that because I've been in corporate organizations where, I've been the guy, oh, Jeff will do it, Jeff will do it. And then you've got the people who wander around that I'm going to be honest, I want to beat to death with a paper clip. I don't know how
Fair.
that's possible, but they're the idiots who are always dropping stuff on my desk and they make a mess. And then they're off having lunch and they're off, basically they're the annoying ones in the lunchroom making all this noise while we're working. Um, how does a manager balance those people? Because I feel like they've got too good of boundaries
Right.
or something. So, what advice would you give if a manager's looking at somebody and they're seeing that, oh, suddenly Jeff's quiet, Jeff doesn't leave his desk, he doesn't get up, he doesn't go to the bathroom, he doesn't eat or drink, and oh, we got I'm going to use Sheryl, but not Sheryl because she's nice. But Cheryl's got nothing but time to be in the lunchroom, or Cheryl's running the social committee and planning the next big outing. And meanwhile, we're missing deadlines because Cheryl's too happy and Jeff's too unhappy.
Yeah. So you know what? It goes back to that recognizing that you have a problem. If a manager or a boss is noticing that, that's awesome. I think too often that goes unrecognized within an
Yeah,
organization. But if you're noticing that one of your employees like has steam coming out of their head or smoke coming out of their brains, and the other one is like kicked back in the lunchroom, it's time to have a conversation. And I would start with the overworked person. I would
yeah,
start with them and say, "Hey, what's going on? Like, let's look at your workload and let's see what's going on. Like, I know I assigned this to you. Why are you working on this other stuff?" And then once you have a better understanding of the picture, because if you just go to the one kicked back in the lunchroom, like, "Oh no, I'm doing great. Yeah, I don't know why they haven't gotten that done. I'm waiting on them." So
yeah.
there's gonna be a lot of finger pointing. And I think having that honest conversation and being able to identify the problem before you look for the solution. Um, but clearly assigning responsibilities, moving forward. And look, if you can't handle this, or if something gets dropped on your plate that shouldn't be there, we need to know about it. We need to discuss it.
Yeah. Well, and for what it's worth, early in my career, I think I was 18, I worked with a guy who was the oldest 40-year-old you've ever met. He was gray-haired, he was unhealthy, he was unhappy, and his default was just give it to me, I'll do it. He wouldn't
Yeah,
train anyone, he wouldn't explain.
yeah,
And literally his around his desk was these little, it was like he built a fort and these were his walls, they were the boundaries. Um, he ended up in the hospital and we had to come in and but it caused him physical anxiety when someone touched his stuff because he had a system which was code for I don't know what's going on, but it was like, I'll put this fire on top of that fire so that I don't see both of them. I just see one. But all he got from management, again, this was I won't say the decade, but it was, earlier. What he got from management was you're disappointing, you're not producing enough. And it was like we had a team, literally, I think there was 10 people sitting there every day going, give me something to do. And one guy was buried in stuff. And, in his case, I think it was 5 years of resentment
yeah,
before he ended up in the hospital.
yeah. Yeah, and look, we talked earlier about responsibility, about taking responsibility. Like, that guy wasn't a victim.
Yeah.
You were offering to help him. He's got some underlying beliefs that he's not worthwhile if he doesn't do all this work, that he'll be, easily replaced if he's not showing the world that he can do absolutely everything. It's unfortunate to hear management come in and say, you're not producing, because that's just not knowing what's going on with your team. And that's
Well,
unacceptable.
for what it's worth, he was one of those show up and scream managers. He felt
Yeah.
like if he hadn't yelled at everybody by noon, he was behind schedule. So love the 90s, love the late 80s.
Yes.
It's just
Yeah.
we're nicer now, I think.
A little. I had a boss that used to walk in the morning, and I never knew if I was a raise or yelled at, because it was every other day, like, I'm working on getting you a raise. And then the
Mhm.
next day she would come in, what the hell did you do? And I'm like, so yeah, that was a fun boss.
I feel like, I'm going to be insensitive and say, I'm sorry, but are you on meds? And if not, should you be? Because, but clearly
She should have been, yes.
clearly not somebody who's doing the inner work. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that is very, very fair. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I could talk to you all day, but I want to be mindful and respectful. So if somebody wants to work with you or they want to have your workshop, and by the way, I feel like we need to have a version of your workshop for my community. How does somebody bring Sheryl Sheryl to the rescue? And
Yeah.
I feel like you got a cape or something.
I have considered one. My old business cards actually said superhero on them because I was so involved in rescue. First thing is, you can always reach out by email. It's Sheryl with an S at SherylGreenspeaks.com. What I would love is I have a free cheat sheet on how to say no that people can download. So if you go to youhadme@no.com, you'll see a little link that says get your free cheat sheet. And it's honestly printed out, laminate it, slap it to the wall. And when you need to, you need to say no to someone, it gives you all the different ways you can do it and some suggested verbiage.
I love it. I'm going to ask you a really dicey question right now, Sheryl.
Yeah.
How do I politely give that to somebody who's biting everyone's head off because they haven't set boundaries?
That's a great question. With a gift bow on it.
I just
No,
feel I'm going to get it shoved somewhere that hurts. I just,
I would throw yourself under the bus and just be like, hey, I had this great guest on my show and I downloaded this cheat sheet. I think everyone needs this. It's helped me so much. And just I don't want to keep it from the world. And then hand it out to a couple of other people too, so that you
yeah.
don't get punched.
See, I'm thinking passive aggressive. I'm just going to
Yeah,
hang it on the billboard in the lunchroom and
that works too.
inter-office memo. Everybody gets a coffee. Again, I've worked with some touchy people because
Yeah.
they're burning out and their hair's on fire and they're desperate. So
Yeah.
yeah. And I feel like I'm gonna anonymously, Secret Santa this year. There's gonna be some books going out. Hey, look what's under the tree. I wonder what this is.
It's Look, I created the book, and then hold on, if I move my head to the correct side, there we go. I created a coloring book to go with
Oh,
it. So it's a coloring book for adults with quotes from the book, and I recommend doing a package with the two of them. Honestly, I wish somebody had given me this years ago. I wish someone had sat me down and said, it's okay to say no, and your self-worth is not based, it's not dependent on what you do for others. So put yourself first for once. And I love, make your priorities a priority.
I love it. And I love the coloring book, the combo.
It's
I'm a
fun.
big fan of journals. Now I'm gonna have to create a coloring book because why
Yeah.
not?
Yep, absolutely. I had someone ask me in an interview, what's next? And I went, I'm gonna make a coloring book.
Hmm.
So I did.
And
So
next
I
to
did.
journal, so journal is my default. If somebody says what's next, it's a journal or a
Journal.
workbook.
Okay.
But coloring
Okay.
book, I
Yeah,
love it. It's brilliant.
it's fun.
Um, Now, I could ask you 1,000 questions, but is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't that you'd like to just trot out here so everybody can take it away and run with it?
You know, the the one let's see. Okay. The one piece of advice I'd love people to have is you're going to screw up. I seriously, no matter how far along you are in this journey, no matter how much work you put into it, no matter how hard you throw yourself in, um, we're humans and we're going to make mistakes and we're going to have boundary backslides. And you have an opportunity, just like you have an opportunity when you sit down and eat an entire cake in one sitting. Well,
Not today, not today.
not today. I love that. I'm gonna do that now. Um,
Yet.
but you have an opportunity. You can look at the 3 crumbs on the cake and you can go, I'm disgusting.
Yeah.
I don't deserve to be healthy and to be thin and healthy and comfortable, whatever. And I'm just gonna eat whatever I want for the rest of my life. You could do that, or you can say, oops, ate a whole cake. Gonna just sit in that for right now, and tomorrow morning I'm going back to my oatmeal for breakfast or whatever it is. And you have that opportunity with boundary backslides. I Really quick story, was at the supermarket. I was waiting in the line at the pharmacy and there was a woman stupid close behind me, stupid close. And I was like, well, I should be saying something right now. I should ask her. She's literally in crossing a
Yep.
physical boundary here. But my brain was going, and I'm 6 steps ahead, where I end up in this like fist fight with a senior citizen, knocking over there was like a CBD display right next to it. So I didn't say anything. And the rest of the day I'm walking around like, oh my God, how did I not say something? Like, I literally wrote a book on boundaries and I let this happen. And I used it as a teaching point for me, and I used it as a teaching point for my community,
Yep.
because they're going to happen. So just learn from it. Just embrace the whoopsie and learn from it going forward. That's going to be a new phrase: embrace the whoopsie.
Embrace the
Um,
whoopsie. Yep. There
Embrace
you
the
go.
whoopsie. So
I
and
feel like that's a t-shirt
yes.
or a hat. I'd put that on a hat.
So many
Um,
notes from today. I love it. Embrace the whoopsie.
I'm also a fan of bookmarks, just FYI,
Oh,
but
bookmarks. Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be good.
that's
Okay. Yeah.
so my 2 cents when somebody gets too close in my space, um I just ask if they want a hug. And in this society, people back off. So I don't know if it
Oh,
would work for you. It works for me.
in some situations, like with the older woman, it might have been okay.
Yep.
I feel like that could get me in a very uncomfortable area with some people. But yeah, I
Yeah.
like that. I like
But
that.
be warned, some people say yes, please. And I say, I was kidding. Please back up. So it usually keeps it from becoming that fisticuffs and knocking over displays, but uh,
Right, right.
your results will vary. So I take no responsibility if you listen to the weird stuff Jeff says.
Yeah,
Um,
I love it.
Cheryl, it was both fun and informative, and I apologize. We went a little over, but I think my
Okay.
audience needed to have more Cheryl. I want to thank you for hanging out with me and being on the show.
Thank you. This was awesome. And thank you guys for watching.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our show. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we invite you to either click the link below or scan the QR code to register and listen to other episodes of our podcast. Or if you think your business or you would be a great guest to be on our show, we're always looking for experts in one of the 9 elements of holistic wellness. We'd love to have you. You can either click the link below or you can scan the QR code and complete our speaker intake form. Thank you, and to your wellness.